What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Sloppy Saturdays. And today we are talking about five guys that I believe have the most upside, the most to gain when you talk about combine and their pro days. Obviously, we have running back, receiver, quarterback coming up this Saturday. This is being recorded on Friday. So I wanted to get to you guys five guys that have the most to gain from the combine, from the pro day, these two events. Now, again, a lot of this comes down to position groups, what position groups they're in, how they're looking at it after their college season. Again, how much more do they have to gain when it comes to picks, even rounds ahead? We're going to get into all of it. Now, the first guy I do have to mention here is Taylen Green at number 5. Taylen Green, I feel like, was a layup to be on this list for five guys that have the most to gain from this combine and this pro day. When we look at Taylen Green, this guy is just a combine warrior. Like, let's be honest. When we look at the athletic specimen that he is at 6'6", how he's able to run sub 4.40s, and he has the ability to throw 60 yards effortless. He has that wow factor. He has more physical intangibles than any quarterback in this draft class. And I think it's important for him that he shows that throughout this combine and throughout these pro days because, again, he's not the most accurate quarterback, but that's not what these events are really predicated on. When he makes a throw at 60 yards, that's effortless. And when he runs great for his running times, you can convince a coach on the sidelines to take you fourth, fifth, sixth round. Again, I think he's going to be a late round pick, but maybe he could climb as high as the fourth round. When you look at Taylen Green, like I said, being this physical specimen, being this combine warrior, he has every opportunity to move up. Now, for me, for Taylen Green, I think it's very similar to a Joe Milton type of case. I mean, this guy's a complete project QB. And if you're a coach on the sidelines, you're really hoping to think like, hey, I could fix this guy up. I could get this guy to be more accurate, quicker with his decision making, quicker reading coverages, because he is just not that. When we look at Taylen Green, the highest ever topped out for completion percentage is 61.3, and that's when he was in the Madam West at Boise State. Again, your sub 60 completion percentage is awful. You're not even in the mid 60s. So again, and then when we look at touchdown interception ratio, I mean, you're looking at 19 to 11, 15 to 9, 11 to 9. So this is a guy that's touchdown interception ratio isn't good at all either. But again, for Taylen Green, I think, like I said, he is very similar to a Joe Milton type of thing where this is a guy that's going to sit in your organization for 3 years. And then you hope like maybe after year 3, you could develop him because, again, he has more physical intangibles than anybody. And what he has to work on is fixable. Like, you're never going to get Taylen Green size in the quarterback. No matter how hard somebody tries, you're never going to be able to be a 6'6 quarterback. You're never going to be able to throw 70 yards effortless. You're not going to be able to run 4.4s effortless like that either. But you could be a quicker decision maker. You could become more accurate. It's all part of development. So Taylen Green, again, I think is a guy that's going to be a late pick in this draft. Like, I think he's going to be a 6th to 7th round pick. But depending on how well he tests in this combine, and like I said, for a guy that throws 70 yards effortless and for a guy that's going to run great times, he's a guy that could wow a lot of people and maybe climb up to that 4th, 5th round draft slot in a weak quarterback class. Being the most gifted physically, I think he has a lot to gain from the combine and the pro day. And I think these events are really made for him again because it doesn't really show accuracy. It shows what you are physically, and that's what Taylen Green is, a physical specimen. Taylen Green comes in at number 5. I thought this was a layup, again, obviously being the most physically gifted quarterback and in a weak quarterback class. Again, I expect this guy, like I said, to be a 6th, 7th rounder, but maybe he could climb to the 4th, 5th round with impressive combines and pro days. Now we're getting into number 4. We're going into Chris Brazzell. Now, Chris Brazzell, he comes in at number 4 just solely because I feel like he already has a pretty good draft slot and where he's going to be drafted. I feel like this guy is a second-round guy. Now, again, every pick is more money, so he could climb up even more. I feel like Chris Brazzell, again, another guy that's going to be a combine warrior. When we look at this guy, he's 6'5", 200 pounds, and he's one of the fastest receivers in this draft. So when we look at his size and when we look at his speed, he's going to absolutely kill it in these combine drills. And when he shows in his pro day how he's able to get downfield, I think he's going to have a lot to gain from this. I think you're looking at a guy that could be a mid to late second rounder. If he really impresses in the combine and the pro day, he's more physically gifted than any receiver. He could climb to be the first receiver taken in the second round, or he could climb all the way to the back end of the first round. I feel like Chris Brazzell does have a lot to gain from this combine. The only issue I have with Chris Brazzell, again, from a size, from a contested catch standpoint, I think he's got it. And I think getting downfield speed-wise, big playability, he's got that as well. The other thing with Chris Brazzell that's super impressive, out of every single game that he played this season, his best game comes against the best competition in Georgia. He tears them up for 6 receptions, 177 yards, and 3 touchdowns. I mean, his best game was against the best team he played. That is definitely something to look at when you look at how he's going to compare to an NFL defense. But like I said, my issue with Chris Brazzell is his constant involvement in Tennessee's offense last year. Like, you're looking at a guy with super big playability, obviously between his contested catch ability at 6'5" and how he's able to get downfield. Again, he has all the big playability, but when it comes down to short intermediate routes and your constant involvement, I feel like that wasn't there for him. That is definitely something he could improve on, his route tree, polishing his route running, because he only got over 7 receptions in a game twice. And again, you know how many cupcakes you play on a schedule. And him being Tennessee's number one receiver by a mile, to only have 7 receptions in a game twice, I get a little nervous with his constant involvement. So I want to see this guy separate a little bit better on short and intermediate routes in the NFL. But like I said, for a guy in Chris Brazzell, at his size, at his speed, he's going to be a guy that tests well in every event in the combine. And what he's able to show in his route running, I think, is going to be huge. I think he's a guy that could really rise up the board if he has a great combine and a great pro day to the top end of the second round or possibly the back end of the first round. Chris Brazzell comes in at number 4. At number 3, we're talking about Drew Allar. Now, everybody knows, I said this time and time again, Drew Allar was a prime example of this new age NIL transfer portal, staying another year, taking the money, going all in for your team, which I didn't mind at the time because it looked like Penn State was going in all in. But we said this, your draft capital is not guaranteed year to year. The only quarterbacks that draft capital are guaranteed to retain year to year no matter what is if you have like a Trevor Lawrence or an Arch Manning. You have to be a guy people have really been waiting on. Drew Allar, obviously, his draft capital completely plummeted. We looked at Drew Allar last year as a guy that could have been slotted to the Browns at the number 2 pick. Like I said, he decided to stay, and he got crushed by this. Now in a weak quarterback class, he's an afterthought. Obviously, Penn State season completely unraveled, and he had a gruesome injury. Like, it was the worst possible situation that could ever happen to Drew Allar. But again, very different from Taylen Green. I do think Drew Allar is a little more polished accuracy-wise. Obviously, he does have a lot to prove on. But I think Drew Allar has a true chance to really rise in this draft throughout the combine and throughout his pro day because he could really show how healthy he is. Not only that, this guy really does look the part when you look at 6'5", can make any throw on the field, and he's more mobile than people expect. So if he tests well in some of these athletic events, I think Drew Allar could skyrocket. Again, is he going to pass Ty Simpson? Is he going to pass Fernando Mendoza? Obviously, no chance. But when you look at middle tiers, when you look at Carson Beck, Garrett Nussmeier, Cade Klubnik, like all those guys, he has the opportunity again. I think he's going to be a 4th, 5th rounder. Maybe he could climb up even higher than that in the 3rd round. This is a very weak quarterback class. And this was a guy, when you talk about, again, not only does he look the part, but his pedigree, being a high-level recruit, playing in big games at Penn State, and also being looked at one time as an NFL first-rounder, if he shows how healthy he is throughout this combine and this pro day, I think Drew Allar could climb up all the way up to a 3rd rounder if everything goes well. And I do think he's going to test well in these events because, like I said, he can make every throw. He's super athletic, and he's 6'5". Like, he's the prototypical NFL quarterback when you look at physical intangibles. Drew Allar has the opportunity to climb. Drew Allar, a guy, if you know me, a guy I've always been a fan of, and it's just horrible to see what happened to him. But like I said, and I discussed with Dante Moore, I discussed with others, like, you stay another year in college football when you have this guaranteed top 10 draft capital, you're taking a major risk because it's not a guarantee you're going to be back at that draft capital next year. We see that with Drew Allar. Obviously, there's other cases. I mean, we've seen Justin Herbert stay another year, and he retained his draft capital, but you never truly know. You absolutely never truly know. At number 2, we're going with Jonah Coleman. Now, I think Jonah Coleman has a tremendous amount to gain from the NFL Combine and the Pro Day, mainly because this running back class is absolutely weak. When we look at who's going number 1 in Jeremiah Love, obviously this is a running back that's one of the best first-round running back talents we've ever seen. But after that, when we talk about depth-wise at the running back position, that's what I mean by this class is very weak. Jeremiah Love is going to get drafted within the top 10. After Jeremiah Love, there may not be another running back taken for the next 2 rounds. I think Jonah Coleman has the opportunity to rewrite that, maybe possibly get drafted in the 2nd round, if not be the first running back taken in the 3rd round. Jonah Coleman, I really believe, is one of the guys on this list after Jeremiah Love that can play on any down. When we look at what he was able to do as a receiver with 31 receptions for 300-plus yards this season, and he's 5'9", 228 pounds. So at his size, being able to catch the ball the way he does allows him to be in on every down. Then we also look at him as a pass blocker. He's an above-average blocker. The only thing with Jonah Coleman is he's not as elusive as you might expect. But at the same time, I think every running back after Jeremiah Love is going to be splitting carries with another back. They're going to be a complimentary back. I think Jonah Coleman, though, has the ability with a good combine, with a good pro day, with how versatile he is, to be the next running back taken after Jeremiah Love. And I think that's what these guys are fighting for, because there's a hole in the second running back spot. I think it could really happen for Jonah Coleman. Like I said, because there's guys behind him. Like, I think Jadarian Price is getting more love than Jonah Coleman, which I don't mind. I think they're in the same tier. I think it's mainly because his attachment to Jeremiah Love, obviously being in the same offense. But again, Jonah Coleman separates these guys from other people because, like, for a guy like Ruben Owens who just can't catch the football, that's a limitation. Jonah Coleman doesn't necessarily have limitations. Like I said, he's just not maybe as elusive as you expect, but he could run in between the tackles, he could block, and he could catch. That allows you to be in on every single play. And like I said, with a strong combine and a strong pro day, I think Jonah Coleman could be the second running back taken in its NFL draft if everything goes well. So Jonah Coleman does have a lot to gain. The biggest thing for Jonah Coleman, why I think people are off of him too, is because Adam Muhammad took over like the lead back role late for Washington. But at the same time, you got to keep in mind a lot of these programs are trying to look what they have next year as well. So I wouldn't really buy too much into that. I think Jonah Coleman, again, he's not going to be a bell cow back. Nobody besides Jeremiah Love in this class, again, unless somebody just has an unexpected NFL career, is going to be a bell cow back. We know running backs have been splitting carries more than ever in recent memory. And again, like I said, there's no elite running back after that, but these guys are really fighting for the second running back taken. I think Jonah Coleman, like I said, has a lot to gain. Then at number one, we have Ty Simpson. Now, Ty Simpson is a weird case. I do think he has the most to gain from the NFL Combine and the Pro Day because I think he's definitely the second quarterback taken. I don't think he's fighting for that at all. But now he's fighting for, again, I do think he's going to be taken in the first round. How high in the first round is he going to go? Is he going to test better in the NFL Combine than people expect? When he throws, is he going to be way more accurate and throws with anticipation, like I said, than people expect? The only problem with Ty Simpson, when you look at NFL Combine and for the last four guys we mentioned, he's not a physical specimen. He doesn't have the strongest arm. So he's not going to like wow you and test and a lot of things in the NFL Combine. Like I said, he prioritizes his game more on accuracy and anticipation. But I do think Ty Simpson, like I said, he just keeps climbing and climbing and climbing because it is a weak quarterback class. I said how I think he's the best quarterback in the draft. I said this time and time again. I know that may shock some people. But Ty Simpson has the opportunity, like we said, in our NFL draft, he could possibly go 20 to 30. Now with good NFL Combine and good pro day, you could see this guy go as high as, 11 to 15. He could go to Miami Dolphins. He could go to New York Jets. Again, he is fighting for a lot, but hindsight is 2020. I don't necessarily know if this guy's going to want to go higher because, again, maybe if he goes later, he goes to a better situation. I know every pick, again, there's more money involved, and that is what he has to gain being a higher pick. But you don't know necessarily if you want to be a higher pick. Sometimes if you're a later pick, you get into a better situation. But Ty Simpson, again, has so much to gain from the Combine and his pro day. He's definitely going to be the second quarterback taken. But him being rumored as an NFL first-rounder, being in that 20 to 30 slot, he can maybe climb up to a top 15 slot if he throws really well in the Combine and the pro day. So Ty Simpson definitely with the most to gain. That wraps up this episode of Sloppy Saturday on the 5 players that I think have the most to gain from the NFL Combine and the Pro Day. Make sure you listen to this before Saturday. I know this is coming out late, but these guys are testing in the NFL Combine on Saturday. That wraps up this episode of Sloppy Saturday. Drop down your thoughts below who I possibly missed on this list, and we are